Valentine's Day. Can we give it up for Valentine's Day? Anybody got a Valentine today? Anybody? Let me see those hands. Nobody's got a Valentine? Well, you can always hit up myself, Marissa. We'll be your Valentine. We'll get you a treat. We'll take you out to lunch, whatever. Just let us know. But because it's Valentine's Day, I think it's kind of the right thing to do to talk a little bit about, that thing called love. Anybody like love? Anybody interested in dating? Just it's okay to be honest. Anybody ever thought about dating? Yeah, I see some hands out there. And probably that every single one of you is in some boat. Whether you've seen people who are dating, maybe you've dated before in your life, maybe you've thought about it, maybe you have a crush. I don't know. But I think that all of us in some way, shape, or form, whether we want to admit it or not, we're kind of interested. And so I think that this is a message for us because I hear students all the time, whether it's directly to me or it's through other leaders or stories or whatever. And there's 3 questions that students always ask. The first one is, how do I know I'm ready to date? The second one is, what is the point of dating? And the third one is kind of an interesting one, but like, how do I even date? Like, what do I do? What does it even look like? And so in the time that we have here, we're just going to answer some of those questions because I'm sure that you've seen a lot of posts today or friends that are doing specific things for their Valentine or whether it's your parents or whatever. And so I believe that this is probably on your mind. And if it's not on your mind now, it'll be on your mind later. And so if you're like, Saquon, I don't know if this message really applies to me today, which I think it will, then you know what? You can save this up for a rainy day for when it does come your way. And so I want to be clear and as concise as possible, so we should probably just get into it. So our first question, how do I know I'm ready to date? And so there's going to be 2 things that we'll cover on that. But if you didn't know, people go on what we call first dates, right? So it's like they've never been on a date with a person before, and so they go on a first date. And I know maybe these days people just say like, oh, we're just hanging out. But if we looked at it, the hanging out, whatever it was probably a date. And it's okay to just call like it is. And so usually, most of the time before a first date, maybe the girl might buy a new outfit. Maybe not. Maybe she's content with the outfit she has. But maybe she's like, I'm going on this first date. I might buy a new outfit. And they might even, girls, maybe I'm wrong. Tell me if I am. They might even do your hair. Maybe you'll do your makeup, and you'll get yourself ready. Guys, maybe, and hopefully, you'll take a shower, right? Before you go on your first date with that girl, you'll take a shower, and you'll actually will smell clean. Maybe you'll even wear something that you haven't worn in a while, right? Not just that same raggedy shirt that you wear all the time. Like, you'll actually wear something new and different on this first date. Maybe, and hopefully, boys, you'll put on deodorant, right? Like, that's a great thing to put on before your first date. You'll put on deodorant, right? That's a good thing, I think. And hopefully, and girls, if this doesn't happen, just turn away. Hopefully, boys, you'll plan out where you're going, right? So you don't just, like, show up to hang out, and the girl's like, what are we doing? And you're like, oh, I have no idea. Like, we don't want that, guys. Like, we want to make sure we have a plan. Right, so there are things that people do before they go on a first date. Does that make sense? Yes? Yes? Cool. So, I think those things are great. But you see, I think there's maybe some more work that needs to be done before we go on this first date. And it's not physical things. I think it's things within our heart, things we have to kind of prepare ourselves for before we go on our quote-unquote first date. Because I think that your parents maybe, and if I'm wrong, tell me, your parents probably gave you a age maybe of when you're allowed to date. Anybody's parents give them an age of when they're allowed to date? No? Nobody else? You guys can date whenever you want? There's no age? Man, I feel like growing up, my parents were like, hey, you got to be 16, 18, 45, I don't know. Like, they would just say, like, there's a specific age, right, about when you can date. And so if your parents give you an age, man, you've got to honor that age, right? They are your parents. We want to honor our parents. And so we are going to make sure that we listen to them. So if they say the age limit is 16, don't have some secret weird relationship behind their back before 16. Wait, honor your parents. So if that's the case, right, you're thinking like, how do I know I'm ready to date? Well, it's not until 16, so like you don't need to reinvent the wheel to try to find some new answer. Like hold fast to your parents. But maybe some of you might be in this camp where there is no age. And so you're really trying to figure out, man, how do I know I'm ready to date? And so we have two things, Andrew. We got two things about how we can know we're ready to date. And the first one is this. It says you are ready to date when you love God most. You are ready to date when you love God most. The first question to ask about dating is the same question to ask about life. What do you love? You are only ready to date when you can say that you love God most, right? And we use this word love for a lot of different things. A lot of different things. For me, you guys know what I love. I love ketchup on a lot of different foods. On my California burritos. On lots of things. Like, I love ketchup. That's just me, right? But, like, do I love ketchup the same way that I love my Valentine Marissa? No. Right? That's kind of strange. Can you imagine being equated to ketchup? That's a little weird, right? So we use this love. We use this term, this phrase a lot, Noah, right? We use it all the time. And so I think, man, we are ready to date when we love God most. Mark 12:30, it says this. It says, and you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and with all your strength. And so you will truly not love anyone else if you do not love God first and foremost. And no one will truly love you if they do not love God more than they love you. The first step toward your first date should always be a step of faith we make toward Jesus, right? That step that we take before we go on our first date, man, make sure that you know Jesus, that you have a relationship with God, right? That you've trusted him. You've given him your whole heart, your whole life, and you've started this journey of pursuing him, growing in your knowledge and wisdom of who God is, growing in your understanding of what God's purpose is for your life. The command to love the Lord your God is the calling that God has given you and I. I'm going to be talking about this next Sunday in the morning for the adults. I'm talking about how love is essential, right? It's this thing that we have to have. And so when it comes to God, love is not optional. It's essential. And so we are to love the Lord with our heart, soul, mind, and strength. And so the heart, as you can see up here, the heart is the control center of our body, contains with our emotions and our feelings. So all the emotions and feelings that you have inside of you, use those to love God well. All of them. Every single emotion, every single feeling that you have within your heart, use those to love God, right? Direct them, push them, guide them to loving God with all that you possibly can. Right? I don't have to teach you how to love the things that you love. You don't need me for that at all. I know that some of you love sports, and I didn't have to tell you that. Your parents didn't have to tell you that. You, at some point in time, figured out that that's what you loved. Or maybe for some of you, it was music. Maybe for some of you, it was fashion. Maybe for some of you, it's TV and movies. Like, there are things that we don't have to teach you to love. But right, as we sing, it says, teach me your ways, O Lord. To love God, man, he needs to teach us how to do so. We have to teach ourselves how to do so. Right? So all of our emotions and feelings, we direct those things towards God. And then our soul, the essence of who you are. Your whole being is to love God. And everything you say and everything you do and everything that you are and everything that you represent, it's supposed to be directed and guided towards loving God. Your mind, right? Everything that you think, the things that you allow to be truth in your mind, those things, those thoughts that you have are supposed to love God. And so whether those are thoughts that think about how great God is, or whether those are thoughts that make sure that, you know what, I'm going to make sure that my thoughts aren't really unkind and negative about other people, because that wouldn't be loving God with my thoughts. Right? We want to make sure that our thoughts are in line with who God is, and we can love God well with our thoughts. And I think it's something that's probably overlooked all the time, right? Because we have millions, I'm sure billions of thoughts every single day. And we don't keep track of all the thoughts that we have. It's not possible. So it's probably something that's often overlooked. But I'm telling you, it's so important, right? Because it says, love God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all of your mind, with your thoughts. And lastly, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and your strength, your action and power. Right? You know what? It's like, you know what, God? I know that there are things that I do that are not loving. They're unkind. They're selfish. They're guided towards what I want in this life. But God has not called you to a life of selfishness. I think you know that this life is not about you. He's not called you to a life of selfishness. But he's called you to use your strength, your actions, your being for loving him. Right? That's how we are ready to date when we love God most. And it doesn't say love God perfect. Get that straight. It's not like, oh, I've got to love God perfectly before I can date. Because then you can never date. You can never get married. You can never be in a relationship. Because it's just simply not possible to love God perfectly. But it should be this journey, this striving, this practice of pursuing to love God with our heart, soul, mind, and strength. So not only are we ready to date when we love God most, but we are ready to date when we have accountability in community. We are ready to date when we have accountability in community. And what that means is, I was at Jordan's small group this week, and they were talking about accountability. And how it's this thing that, like, people know that they need, but they don't always do, like, a great job of, like, keeping it up and keeping it going. But if we are truly, truly honest with ourselves, we are so easily distracted. We're so easily distracted. And there are temptations in this life that want to keep us from loving God well. And unfortunately, you can use your relationship that you're in as a way to not love God well. But you know what? We want to make sure that we have accountability in community. We want to make sure that there are people who know how we're doing in our relationship. And maybe you're thinking like, but that's supposed to be private. And the problem is that when it's private, it's often dangerous. Right? If your relationship, right, that's not like a marriage relationship, if it's private, it's often dangerous. And so we need to invite people, even when you are married, invite people in to keep you accountable so that you can love God with your heart, soul, and mind, and strength. So not only are we called to love God, but we're also called to love God with our heart, soul, mind, and strength with others, together. Because alone, it can't be done. We need people to hold us accountable. We need to invite people in our life to call us out. And how do you know that these people exist? Well, that means you need real friendships with real life-on-life accountability, where people can encourage you, people can correct you, even though we don't like to be corrected. And maybe, just maybe, people can actually challenge you. And I bet you that you can ask your leaders right now, it's so hard to find those people at age 16. Like it's just hard to find great people like that are going to be really good accountability partners at age 16. Doesn't mean it's not possible, but it's hard. Because on one side or the other, it's like, man, I don't know if I'm going to be totally honest with them. I don't know if they're going to be totally honest with me. But I think it is worth trying. It's worth pursuing. It's worth going to a leader and say, hey, you know what, such as me and him, or, you know, guy A and guy B, or guy girl and girl, right, girl A and girl B, we want to be an accountability partners. Will you help keep us accountable, to keep each other accountable? Because we know that, man, Satan would want nothing else but for us to trip up, to slip up, to make mistakes, to sin, to not love God well. And so I'm telling you, if you want to date well, and if you want to honor God, you want to love God with your dating relationship, you need to do it in community, having people who keep you accountable. Colossians 3:16 says, let the message about Christ in all its riches fill your lives. Teach and counsel each other with all the wisdom he gives. Sing psalms and hymns and spiritual songs to God with thankful hearts. Teach and counsel each other, right? That's what we need to be doing. But until you're teaching and counseling others, until you have that kind of relationship, man, I don't know if it's the best thing for us to have a relationship with someone else if we're not rooted in community. So how can we know that we are ready to date when we love God most and when we have accountability in community. The next question, right? What is the point of dating? Ecclesiastes 12:13, it says this. It says, "Here now is my final conclusion. Fear God and obey his commands, for this is everyone's duty." Marissa brought up last week and said, before we even date, we have to know the purpose for dating. And if you want to discover the purpose of dating, well, we need to make sure that we understand our purpose as people. Right? God has given you and I a purpose in this life. I think probably the most sought after question, the most asked question is, what is the point of life, right? What is the meaning of life? But God has given you and I purpose and has explained that meaning. And right here in that verse, it tells us, what is the purpose of life? What is the meaning of our life? Why are we here on earth? We are here to fear God and to obey him. And this fear doesn't necessarily mean to just live in fear, to be afraid, but it is to respect. Right? It is to say, you are God and I am not. That's what it means to fear God, right? To know our place and our standing with him. When we know and understand our standing with God, that this life is about him, that he's high above it all, high above us, that we are imperfect, yet he is perfect, we can begin to understand that second half, right? It's so hard to obey people that you don't respect. It is. I think it's very difficult. It doesn't mean that it can't happen, but I don't think that God is calling us to just begrudgingly and reluctantly obey him. That's not the life he has for us. He's calling us to obey him out of the love and the grace that he has given us, right? Out of the fact that he sent Jesus to die for us, right? That the love that we recognize that God has for us should motivate us into obeying him. If we really respect others, when we really respect God, we will actively strive and seek out opportunities to obey God and to obey others. And maybe right now you're thinking, Saquon, but that has nothing to do with dating. But you see, the thing is that it's not that far off. Because when it comes to dating, we need to ask ourselves the same thing. Will dating this person help me obey God in my everyday life? Will dating this person, fill in the blank, whoever that person is, will dating them help me to obey or to glorify God in my daily life? Will they help me become more like him? Right? If the point of our lives is to glorify God and love others, then man, we need to use our dating, our relationships, as opportunities to obey God. But if that person hinders you or becomes an obstacle in your life to obey God, then that's not the person for you. That relationship is not for you. What's the right destination for dating? Right, setting the destination for a dating relationship is something that I think I've seen done very poorly. Because if you think about it, why do people practice? Let's say it's an instrument. People, they practice and practice and practice an instrument for what? To get better, right? There's a purpose and a destination in mind. But if you think about a dating relationship, what's the destination? Where is this relationship going? What's the end game? Right? And God in his word would say, well, it's to get married. Right? I'm supposed to date someone so I can marry them later. But if you're like, I don't even know if that's a thing, and sure, yeah, maybe you can't know, but if you don't even want to, then I think you don't have a destination. And in junior high and high school, I don't think that any of you are ready to get married. Are you? I don't think so. So it's man, if I'm going to be dating, but I'm 14 years old, and, God's maybe calling me to marry, that's why the whole point of dating, then, I don't think it's probably worth your time. Because God is saying, hey, you're going to date, but for what purpose? What is the destination? There's a phrase I thought was great, and it says, decisions determine direction, and direction determines destination. Decisions determine direction, right? We get the opportunity to play a part in how our life is going to go. There are a lot of things that are outside of our control. But in our dating relationship, people get married because somebody asked them, right? They make this decision, right, to get down on one knee, to propose to their spouse or their future spouse, to get married. They make a decision to do that. But if you don't have a destination in mind, if there's no end game, then I think you're probably just dating for fun. Which I think if we're all honest with ourselves, that's probably not the best thing for you. To just simply date for fun. Because there's supposed to be a purpose in it. There's this example that I'd heard that I thought was great. To date with no intention of getting married is like going to the grocery store without money. You are either going to leave unhappy or take something that is not yours. Right? To go to the grocery store without money, I mean, I don't know how you're supposed to get groceries at that point. Right? You're either not going to leave, you're going to leave with nothing and not be happy, or you're going to steal something because you didn't have money to pay for it. And you may take something that is not yours. We have to have a destination in sight for our relationships. Because if not, then we really need to rethink why we have that relationship at all. Right? And that really comes down to, you know what? If this person, like I said, is not going to help me obey God more, then man, it's going to help me. They're only going to help me disobey. Right? There's not like this it's just neutral position. We are either growing to become more like Christ, or we're becoming less like him. Like there's not like a place that you could just chill. That doesn't exist. And so when it comes to that relationship, if a person isn't helping you obey God in a relationship, then they're probably going to help you disobey. So we have to be actively remembering that I have to have an intention and a purpose in my dating. And that's what the point is, right? To get married someday and to go and to become more like Jesus through your dating relationship. Right, so we have covered how do I know I'm ready to date. And we're ready to date when we love God most. When we have accountability and community, when we have people who can keep us accountable, who challenge us, who encourage us, who correct us even. We talked about what is the point of dating. And it's to get married. It's to glorify God in your relationship. And a key question that we have to ask is, will this person help me obey or disobey in my day-to-day life? And the last question, which I think is a funny question because I don't really have like an answer per se for you, but how do I even date? I don't know. Like, I don't know how you'd even date, right? There's a lot of different ways that people date today. But like I said, and I could be wrong, I don't think that any of you are ready to get married yet. Probably not. We often think like, oh, but Saquon, what if I marry my high school sweetheart? Do you know how many followers? Do you know how many users there are on TikTok? I think I looked it up today, or Rob did for me. And it was something like 800 million. 800 million. I don't know what the population of the United States is. Maybe it's 800 million, maybe less, maybe like 650 or something, I don't know. But that's a lot of people, no? 800 million users on TikTok. I bet you that only 1% of those people actually make millions of dollars on TikTok. It's not everybody, and we know that. We know that not everybody does that. But there's 800 million people who say, what if I'm that 1%? And I think that we're like, you're probably not going to go viral on TikTok. It's like, I guess it's possible because other people have done it, but like, it's not really likely for you. Does anyone agree with that? You're probably not likely to go viral on TikTok. I think that's okay to say. If you're offended by that, I'm so sorry. But I just think that we're probably not going to go viral and have millions and millions of followers on TikTok. It's possible, but it's not likely. And I bring that up because it's kind of the same thing with high school sweethearts. All of your leaders here, I think, have dated somebody at some point in time and did not marry their high school sweetheart. Maybe. But not me. Jordan? Not Jordan. Amy? Aubrey? Marissa? Elijah? None. So none of us here married or are dated or are still with the person that we dated in high school. Does it happen to people? It does. But it's almost like going viral on TikTok. And like not just like a one-hit wonder where you like, get millions of views and then you just like taper off. It's like really like, to be consistent, right? We know those people. We know the David Dobrik's. We know the D'Amelios. Like we know those people. But those are like the 1%ers. It's not likely to happen. And the same thing for their high school sweetheart. It's not likely. So don't try to bank on that. And so, right, the question really is, right, how do I even date? Well, I think there's one thing that I can give you. Right, I talked about this earlier this week with Aubrey and Victor, and we were like, do we advise you to date? Nah, we don't. Are you going to listen to us? Maybe, maybe not. And some of you won't. And that's just the reality. Because people probably told us when we were in high school, probably don't date. And we're like, we know better. I'll be the 1%, and then it didn't happen. So, do we encourage you to date? Not really. Are you going to listen to us? Maybe, maybe not. And if you don't listen to us and you still want to date, here's a concept that I want to explain for you. We need to change our mentality from a consumer to a companion. If you're going to date, what I don't encourage you to do, change your mentality from a consumer to a companion. A consumer looks for someone or something that exists for you, right? The other day, I went out and I got an iPhone, the 12 Pro, and I went to T-Mobile and I looked at phones and I wanted this one and I got it. And you know what? This phone exists for me, not for you. Not for anybody else. It exists for me. Do I use it with other purposes? Sure, I take your picture, I upload on Instagram, all that stuff. But it exists for me. I'm a consumer, like many of you. And so, right, a consumer looks for someone or something that exists for you. As consumers, we purchase or take something based solely on how it benefits us and not what we do for the item. People date this way, unfortunately. They are consumers in relationships. And they're just here to consume. They're just here to take. They're just here to quote unquote purchase and take something based solely on how it benefits us. They're not really in the relationship to try to benefit the other person. They're just in for their own personal selfish gain. And so that is right. How do we even date? Well, not that way. That I can tell you for sure. Don't do this. Don't be a consumer who's just taking things from people. But rather, we should be searching for a companion. A companion looks for someone who goes along with you to your what? Your destination. Right? We talked about that, right? Where is your relationship going? Hopefully there's a destination in mind. And so we're looking for someone to go along with us in this destination. And so we said, right, the purpose of our life, our whole entire being, and I only got 2 minutes, we're going to wrap up, our whole entire existence is to glorify and obey God. And the destination is to become more like him. And so in our dating relationship, the destination should become more like him while someone else comes along with us. So that both of you are becoming more like him, right? If we view dating as the search for a companion instead of something to consume, then we shift our view from what does this boyfriend or girlfriend do for me, selfishness, to does this boyfriend or girlfriend encourage me on my journey to my destination? If you are going to date, you should be searching and pursuing for someone who is going to encourage you on your journey to your destination and also is on their own journey to their destination, which is to become more like Jesus. I think it's a often used I don't even know if I have it in there, Marissa, but it's an often used kind of like analogy, right? That like, let's say, you're running a race, and hopefully, right, you want someone who's running the race with you, right? Not someone who's just like, yeah, I'm not trying to run this race with you, or they're on a completely different track. You want someone who's running the race with you, right? The race of life, the race in dating, and it's together. Side by side, journeying together. That's the kind of person that you want. And the destination, the finish line, is becoming more like Jesus. That's the kind of person that we should be pursuing. And I bet you that if that is your your category, that's the thing that you're based on how you're going to date, that there are a lot of people that are just immediately going to fall off from who you could go be with. Because we know that there's a lot of people that don't really want to follow Jesus. The church isn't really in for them. And it's like, man, if they aren't running to the same destination as me, then I should not be with them. Hebrews 12, 1 through 2, says this. It says, go to the first one. It says, therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles. And so right here, go back, Marissa, if that person that you're dating hinders you, they're not for you. Right? They're not running in that same direction. They're not going to that same destination as you. And they are not for you. You go to the next slide. And let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us, fixing our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of our faith. Right? That same thing. If we're going to be with someone, if we're going to date, we want it to be someone who's running with us, who's running the same race as us, fixing their eyes on Jesus. That's the kind of person. That's how we date. If we're going to date and we're going to be in a relationship, that before you even go, right, you're on that first date, you say, you know what, if we're going to be dating, man, we have to be running the same race. We have to have both of our eyes fixed on the prize, that which is Jesus. Because I'm telling you, that's what God has called you and I to. Not everybody will get married. But for those who will, this is what he's calling all people to. Whether it's marriage or not, whether it's relationships or not, that our whole lives will be fixing our eyes on Jesus as we run this race that has been prepared and marked for us. That's how we date. And I know maybe it felt a little long or kind of like a fire hydrant of information, but I really hope that you get the big points, right? The purpose of our whole life is to follow God, to give him our whole self. To say, you know what, God, I'm going to worship you with my whole life, and I'm going to love you with my heart, soul, mind, and strength. And when it comes to dating, God, I'm going to make sure that I use that dating relationship to obey you. And that the person I'm with also obeys you as well. And that's not even necessarily like your control, but man, as you encourage them, that they should be encouraging you. As you attend church, that they would be coming along with you, or to a different church. Right, as you read your word, that they're making sure that they're reading their word. As you pray for them and for others, that they pray for you and for others. That's the kind of people that God calls us to be with. And I promise you, even though maybe sometimes it seems like there's no way, I promise you this person, they exist. I promise you. It's so easy to settle, but I promise you, you wait patiently and you cry out to God that this person exists. Whether it's for friendship or for relationship, this person, these people, God has prepared for your life.